坚持“九二共识”，反对台独，是两岸关系和平发展的政治基础。我们坚决反对台独分裂势力。
If you ask like 100 people in Taiwan, what is 1992 consensus? Everybody would give you a different take. For both parties who were involved at the time, they were just stroking their own egos happily. And it just turns out that, now after the happy ending, it's not so happy.
It is impossible for me to accept President Xi Jinping's recent remarks without betraying the trust and will of the people.
蔡英文毁坏了两岸这个共同的政治基础，就是不承认九二共识。
所以说，我们对于金门港人来讲，对于这种战争，最伤痛的，就是两边的那个老百姓。
This countryside town derives its name, which means peach garden in Mandarin, from its many farms and orchards. In recent years, farmers have sought to ride on their close proximity to the airport to export their produce overseas. For this local honey farmer, one destination in particular has long got him buzzing.
其实以台湾的蜂蜜要挑战大陆市场的话，其实是个蛮大的一个挑战。基本上大陆的蜂蜜，以我认知来讲，琳琅满目哦，但是他们的检验标准可能会跟台湾不一样。当然了，我们要输出到海南这个区块，我们符合他们条件。
Over the past few years, Lien poured in over $150,000 to perfect his honey. He was after the prestigious gold standard, awarded by the local agricultural authorities. He believed this label would serve as a ticket for his product to enter the Chinese market. Lien received the certification, but not the sweet ending that he desired. China recently slapped a ban on Taiwanese honey.
贸易方面，你政治归政是一件事的你其实政府还是以协助农民为主啦，不要以政治来打压农民。就是说，你们又在那边搞一套我们农民很像都是受害者。 我们都已经具备条件了，我也觉得我做这完全没有意义我干脆跟一般蜂农一样就好了嘛，我干嘛要多付这些费用？光检验一套就好几万了。大陆怎么样去对你政府一定要你要去想办法去了解嘛，那不是我们蜂农的事就是你这政府跟大陆两岸交流的问题了嘛，我们是受害者。
China's curbs on Taiwanese imports extend beyond honey to hundreds of agricultural products, from fruits to seafood. Some of these products have been banned since 2021, but hundreds more were added to the list on August 2nd, 2022. The day before US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's long-expected trip to Taiwan. China's official reasons for the ban, however, made no reference to Pelosi's visit.
那禁止了一些食品进口，也是因为这个食品有些问题，它会影响到两岸民众的生命健康安全，所以我们采取了这个禁止这些有问题的农业水果产品的进口，因为这主要考虑到大陆的相关的这个江河的 这个生态环境啊，不要这个破坏我们的生态环境。
Even before the bans on Taiwanese produce, relations between Beijing and Taipei have been frosty since 2016, the year the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, came into power. The DPP shelved a key cross-strait policy adopted by the previous Kuomintang, or KMT, government. That policy was the 1992 Consensus. It refers to an agreement made between Chinese and Taiwanese officials in 1992 on there being one China.
只要是在一个中国原则基础之上，只要是两岸双方都认为自己是中国人，那么就可以通过和平的方式，用两岸双方都能接受的方式，来政治协商、政治谈判，解决业已存在多年的政治对立问题。
Since 1992, both Beijing and Taipei have expressed different interpretations of the 1992 Consensus.
I think Beijing, on purpose, avoided the fact that the two sides in 1992 did have some disagreement on the definition of one China. So Beijing tried to look at the commonality, that is one China, which Taiwan also agreed in 1992. But actually, the value of the beauty of ambiguity is to look at the commonality first, as I said, to shelve dispute, to see commonalities, because this is the very first and very important step towards conflict management and conflict resolution.
双方通过协商，认为通过口头方式达成协议比较稳妥，易于执行。尤其是在当时呢，一个中国原则是两岸双方的常识，只是政权符号表达不同认识，但是对一个中国的原则没有分歧，没有歧义。
When the KMT adopted the 1992 Consensus policy in the 2000s, it ushered in a new era for the territory. The move appeased China. Beijing increased trade and economic cooperation with the territory and reduced military activities near the island. But economic woes and worries that Taiwan had become too dependent on China led voters to turn their backs on the KMT in 2016 in favor of the DPP. Their leader, President Tsai, rejects the 1992 Consensus, which she sees as an acceptance of China's one country, two systems model. Because of this, China refuses to engage in dialogue with her government. Lo Zhejiang, a DPP politician whose policy focus is on foreign affairs, says China has been too rigid in its approach.
Taiwan is a free and democratic society, and in terms of how to resolve the differences between the two sides, there have been all kinds of formulas, models proposed by different groups, political parties in Taiwan. But China has refused all possible alternative formulas to resolve the differences between the two sides. So it's not that Taiwan not innovative enough to create ideas and models.
But why is Beijing placing so much emphasis on a 30-year-old agreement? Part of the answer lies in the archives of this nearly 120-year-old institution in Taipei. Here, this veteran lawyer has kept records from a historic event he participated in 32 years ago. The year was 1990, a time of tragedy. 46 Chinese nationals had just died in twin disasters. These were illegal immigrants who traveled to Taiwan in fishing boats. Eventually, these illegal immigrants were caught and sent back to China. But none of the 46 made it home. 21 drowned when their boat sank, and 25 died of suffocation in another vessel.
The reason why they were suffocated to death is unknown, but the fact remains It has something to do with the fact that people on mainland China, especially the neighboring province, Fujian, and they wanted to give a try about their sort of a life in Taiwan. And of course, for Taiwan government or Taiwan society, they cannot afford to take all these people into Taiwan.
Known as the Minbing-Yu disasters, the tragedies forced China and Taiwan to abandon their strict policies of no engagement. Representatives from both sides met in this government office in the Taiwan-controlled county of Kinmen to address the crisis head-on. As both Taipei and Beijing did not recognize each other's government at the time, each side got their local Red Cross society to play diplomat.
Because of the hostilities between these two governments, we were not allowed in those days to get in touch with people in mainland, not to mention their governments. The Red Cross Society across the Taiwan Strait, that is Red Cross from Beijing and Red Cross from Taipei, we agreed 100% when we first get in touch with each other on something we need to do to make sure incidents like happened on Minbing-Yu and other similar incidents, not only to prevent tragedy, but also to make sure, save those people who really got themselves into Taiwan without legal permit, what to do with them.
During the meeting, both sides agreed on a set of procedures for repatriating people across the Taiwan Strait. This came to be known as the Kinmen Accord.
The Kinmen Accord was struck when the two sides of the Taiwan Strait had a great deal of unfriendly attitude. So it was very difficult for the two sides to be able to sit down and consult with each other. And also in that accord, you can find both sides try to make good use of creativity to get rid of those very politically sensitive issues. So I think it created the very first, very important atmosphere for the two sides to build mutual trust.
Building on the success of the Kinmen Accord, Taiwan set up the Straits Exchange Foundation, or SEF, a semi-private organization tasked with communicating and conducting business with China. In 1992, representatives from the SEF and their Chinese counterparts from the Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Strait met in Hong Kong. It's in these meetings that the 1992 consensus was reached.
金门协议签订之后啊，打开了两岸之间用和平方式、用签订协议的方式解决两岸政治对立的一扇窗，来推动两岸之间用和平的方式最终化解、解决两岸的政治对立，推动实现国家统一。
It took a tragedy for China and Taiwan to end hostilities and open their doors to each other. But the challenge was always going to be keeping them open. And for a period of time, the 1992 consensus was the key. However, times are different today. Many Taiwanese appear to have lost faith in diplomacy and are bracing themselves for an invasion. China, on the other hand, has vowed to achieve reunification at all costs. But does either side really want to meet on the battlefield?
我们坚持以最大诚意，尽最大努力，争取和平统一的前景，但绝不承诺放弃使用武力。
For the people of Taiwan, the possibility of war has never looked more real. To deal with this threat, the territory has beefed up its defense capabilities to deter China. But some Taiwanese believe that both sides are already on a road to war. Since February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, workshops like this have been growing in popularity. Here, bullets have been swapped with BB gun pellets. The aim of the course is not to train civilian soldiers, but to imbue participants with a fighting spirit.
我自己从小其实对于小时候有曾经立志当女大兵这样，所以就是因为这个原因，所以就是想要特别来了解跟上课这样。有很大的一部分是除了自己学到这些知识之外，那一部分就是当然不希望用到那一天就走上战争这个最后这一步，对。
当然，我们也不想被他们统治，就是我们跟对岸的那个政治制度是完全不一样的。对，我们还是希望保有一个自由的国土。
他的想法是，他从海上上来的时候，你看我们从岸上看下去是海洋，所以他反而是伪装了。
With a name that means bear in Mandarin, this former soldier has never been one to shy away from battle. In teaching participants to understand the enemy, he seeks to impart both his tactical knowledge and a grisly sense of resilience.
我们的共识都是在于，如何在有这么一天的时候，如何去防范？那我们要怎么起身防范？那我们怎么做到，去遏止这件事情？那武力遏止或许是从古到今最有效的方式之一，让他知道说侵犯台湾或者是来做这所谓的这些动作的话，他会付出更大的代价。
Elsewhere in Taiwan, one community has a very different view on war. The county of Kinmen sits just 20 kilometers off the coast of mainland China, overlooking Xiamen City. In 1958, the Chinese government launched an attack on the island. It was widely seen as a continuation of the Chinese Civil War, which ended when KMT forces led by Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan 9 years before.
所以说我们对于金门我人来讲，对于这种战争最伤痛的，就是两边的那个老百姓，不但财产、各个生命都会失去保障跟安全，所以说我们最不喜欢看到的，就是再有战争。
Wu Sengdong, a third-generation blacksmith, spent the first 20 years of his life living in a war zone. Between 1958 and 1979, the Chinese People's Liberation Army fired artillery shells on the island every 2 days.
因为我们都是在那个炮火下长大的，所以说变成说我们已经研究大家在整个金门的地方都会听这个炮声，我们大概都可以知道说，这个炮弹的落点大概在哪里，离我们的距离大概有多远。所以说一般来金门当过兵的一些军人，他们回去也都有这个回忆。
Wu's family not only survived the attacks, they made a living from it. For 20 years, Wu and his father combed Kinmen's beaches for these prized artillery shells. They repurposed these weapons into knives and other metalware, a craft that continues to be Wu's bread and butter. After over 4 decades of defending Kinmen, Taiwan began to demilitarize the island in 1992. Troops were diverted to other strategic locations in the territory. With this, Kinmen put the past behind and began a new chapter with China. Over the past 2 decades, the county has been at the forefront of the mini 3 links. It's a special arrangement to have direct shipping, postal services, and transport between China and Taiwan. and a ferry service opened in 2001, finally allowing Kinmen residents to travel directly to the mainland. In the past, the only way to reach the mainland was through a flight from Taipei to Hong Kong.
当时已经开放了大陆探亲，我们所有的乡亲呢可以到香港、到澳门，然后到大陆去探亲。但是金门人要到大陆去探亲，到厦门去探亲，你看都看得到啦，还是要从金门到台北来，从台北再到香港，从香港再到厦门，从厦门再到我们金门的对面。那有个笑话啊，他哥哥呢就走这条路，他弟弟就游泳过去，就他弟弟先到。那我身为一个金门人，我觉得不应该让这样的事情发生。 所以就让小三通，我就不断的都进行小三通。
From a Cold War flashpoint, Kinmen gradually transformed into a hub for cross-strait exchanges. These exchanges included tourism, which took off in the late 2000s, when the 1992 consensus ushered in a new era of working relations between Taipei and Beijing. Wu's Knife Shop was one of the many local businesses that prospered from this development.
他们觉得说，哎，这个是一个历史，哦，他们觉得刀子不但好用，他觉得这是两岸的一个历史，他们觉得非常有纪念性。他们也觉得说，很多就是这客人觉得说，哎，这种就是代表这是一种战争与和平的象征。
Chinese tourists have not been in Kinmen for a while. In 2019, China banned solo travelers to Taiwan amid heightened tensions between the two sides. The move, along with the pandemic, cost the territory more than $800 million in tourism revenue. Boat captain Hong Chongyang is one of many Kinmen residents who anxiously await the return of Chinese visitors. Today, he steers a small fishing boat, but he hopes to helm a ferry between Kinmen and neighboring Xiamen when the service resumes.
我当然是希望两岸永远都是和平的角色，和平没有战争，你的人民才会富裕，才会有机会可以让自己的生活过得更好。那 我相信，如果有一天就是可以走到更友好的情况下的话，就是我可以改变我现在的生活方式。大概在2000年那时候，就有时候我们晚上出去，我们要怎么分辨厦门跟金门？最简单的方式就是你看到有灯很亮的那个地方，那个是金门；你看到没有灯暗暗的地方，那个就是厦门。那当然现在已经 换过来了，你现在出去，你看到很亮的地方，那可能就是福建厦门啊。那你看到比较没有那么亮的地方，那当然那个就是金门了。就20年来，我们的位置已经改变了，那你当然会很感慨，你当然会很羡慕啊，因为你在那边你可以找到更多你可以发展的空间跟发展的方向啊。可是你在金门你是找不到的。
我觉得说两岸应该站在一个平等、尊重的一个机制下。如果我们中央政府要跟大陆就是说一个对立关系，那你应该有配套措施来弥补这方面造成的经济损失，或者是说，那如果你没办法去弥补这方面的损失，是不是应该要跟对岸有一个妥适的一个沟通的一个机制？我觉得说应该是两岸的政府都要去思考的。
After decades in the front lines, the people of Kinmen now have a pragmatic view on cross-strait relations. But elsewhere in Taiwan, faith is placed on the territory's most prized industry, semiconductors. So strategic is the industry for the territory that has been called a silicon shield against aggression. This is a typical breakfast spot in Taiwan. Over buns and soy milk, conversations among some diners tend to revolve around what's called a magic mountain that protects the territory. Not an actual mountain by dictionary definitions, but Taiwan's multi-billion-dollar semiconductor industry. It was in 1974 when the idea for such an industry was planted in a soy milk cafe just like this one. US and Taiwan officials met for breakfast and discussed what would become one of the most significant technology transfer deals in history.
I think that resulted largely from the need of Taiwan to advance its economic development from some basic industries to some more high-tech companies that can help Taiwan boost Taiwan's earning and Taiwan's international status.
Today, Taiwan controls more than 60% of the global market for semiconductors. Their advanced chips are used in everything from computers, phones, to military equipment. Taiwan hopes that by staying ahead of the game, it can continue to use its semiconductors as bargaining chips for peace.
半导体是不是台湾的护国神山？到目前我看起来是，因为我们台湾的利益跟其他国家的利益是一致的。我们的台积电半导体产业确实在这一个产业的制造这个阶段产生了现在最大的这个附加价值。那所以就是这一块的这个产生的结果，是因为台湾本身在半导体上面，我们不断的去做创新。这个创新的本身是跟我们的品牌商，譬如说高通、博通，我们这是技术是分享的。
Today, China relies on Taiwan for more than a third of its semiconductors. The superpower only produces 6% of the chips it needs. And according to the founder of Taiwan's oldest semiconductor company, it won't be catching up with Taiwan anytime soon.
这个半导体啊，这个chip industry， 它是一个很 globalized 的，所以这些它没有任何一个地区或国家说我可以独立发展出有竞争力的半导体，这不可能啊！所以现在中共来讲，不管它今天发展到什么程度，将来它失掉了这个比方日本呐、这个荷兰呐、或者是美国在这个设计自动化软体上面的支持啊，它是不可能进步的。
Zhao believes there's a bright future for Taiwan's semiconductor industry. At the same time, he warns against placing too much reliance on it as a strategic shield. Zhao has pledged millions of dollars into strengthening Taiwan's military and civilian defenses. He uses his favorite pastime, Wei Ti, to explain his motivations.
围棋并不是说子多就赢，围棋最怕说你些子挤成一团，然后被人家外面用少数的子就把你统统吃掉啊！所以这个围棋讲究要有两只眼睛才能活啊！你说挤成一团，这个就是一定输的了啊！所以今天如果两岸来讲呢，这种智慧型的战争，大陆人多是没有用的。 军舰多、飞机多也是没有用的，啊，所以你看乌克兰，我们看到乌克兰如果从地面上那个坦克啊这些数目，好像俄国很多，可现在节节败退。如果我们要抵抗中共的侵略，我们要每个人呢从心里面啊能够说我要为国家战斗，我要有勇气，同时我有信心，我可以打赢啊。 所以，那么你靠一个像说一个公司或者几个工厂来保护你，这当然是非常危险的。
The prospect of war might loom large, but it hasn't dented ties of business across the strait. For decades, businesses on both sides have built bridges through joint projects and ventures. There are nearly 5,000 Taiwanese companies in the Chinese city of Kunshan, which borders Shanghai. they didn't just introduce offices and jobs. They brought their food and night spots too.
推动两岸经济合作，这是实现两岸经济一体化这个实现中华民族经济发展的必由之路，也是实现这个两岸关系发展、推动国家统一进程的重要的方法跟路径。
In recent years, China has introduced a slew of incentives to entice Taiwanese businesses, like this health tech company, to set up shop here. These incentives include tax rebates, grants, and help with accommodation and securing equipment. For entrepreneur Dr. Chai Chung-yuan, the decision to move here was an easy one.
在台湾坦白说比较困难，因为台湾的市场份额、台湾的资金甚至产业是比较有偏重在某一些行业，比如说半导体，一些高端制造。但是如果说你考虑到这个 X 光啊、影像设备、高端影像设备，台湾是缺乏相应的产业链，所以台湾是没有办法有相应的条件让我们去做现在桃园医疗这家公司。所以说，为什么我们选择在上海？上海人才、资金、政府政策、产业的上下游都是一个绝佳的这个位置。所以他们把很多大企业的文化制度带到我们小公司来，再根据我们小公司的实际需求做了一些调整，那才有可能形成我们这么有效率，现在能够在这么短的时间内能够产生这么多新的产品、新的成绩、新的文章、新的项目，能得到医生的认可。通过这种台创的企业，或是大陆跟台湾同胞的创新的合作这种模式，能够加深两岸同胞对彼此的文化、对经济它的认识，也可以降低一些误会跟摩擦。
In its 2022 white paper on Taiwan, Beijing celebrated economic exchanges between China and Taiwan for helping pave the way towards reunification. However, a recent poll conducted by Taiwan's Chengchi University showed that only 1 in 10 Taiwanese want immediate reunification. Taiwan's government continues to use such trends as a mandate to reject the One China principle embodied by the 1992 consensus. But some opposition politicians in the territory fervently defend One China. Wu Qiangdian is chairman of the New Party, an offshoot of the Kuomintang that supports reunification with China. When the DPP was elected in 2016, with a promise to redefine relations with Beijing, he took matters into his own hands. He visited China to help mend bridges.
2016年是蔡英文当选总统嘛，那开始对于9·2共识啊，他就不接受嘛。那大陆对台湾原来的一些这个互信啊，就破坏殆尽。那两岸就产生了很大的一个僵局。那基本上都跟大陆的领导呢，也都很深入的对谈，而且那次活动哦，基本上都是一把手。 所以谈得很深入，不要说因为这个民进党执政之后有一些这个他们的比较台独倾向，影响到我们两岸的发展。
Over the past 6 years, Wu has sought to move collaborations between China and Taiwan that were derailed due to cross-strait tensions back on track. One project in particular has made waves. This reservoir in Kinmen draws water from a lake in China's Fujian province. It's not just the nearly 20-kilometer underwater pipeline supplying the water that's been hailed as an achievement, but the fact that the project was completed amid heightened political tensions between Beijing and Taipei.
这个前后也历经了23年，所以现在虽然总统已经从陈水扁、马英九换到这个蔡英文来了。 但金门跟这个龙湖的通水呢，都是继续的，也没有出任何问题。那也要感谢大陆，也要感谢参与的人，让这个事情实现。所以金门现在是不缺水的。
Through this reservoir, China provides Kinmen with over 30,000 tons of water a day, a third of its daily needs. But some commentators warn of troubles brewing beneath the surface.
当初是用定额的制度去买，可是现在用水量并没有那么大，那我们一样配这个钱给陆方，那会变成说我们多买水进来。现在两岸关系不佳，我们也没有机会去跟对岸谈说降低供水的量，然后让我们付比较少的钱去买我们用的水。
Taiwan would very much like to see the water pipelines with China remain open. But even more important is reopening the channels of communication between Beijing and Taipei, which have been closed for 6 years. As Taipei prepares to refresh its leadership in the coming year, how will its people and politicians reset cross-strait relations? During the Cold War, this structure was considered to be one of Taiwan's most potent weapons against China. During the 1960s and 70s, this tower would blast ballads from Taiwanese starlet Teresa Teng. The intended audience? Residents in the Chinese city of Xiamen, about 20 kilometers away.
波音墙最主要的功能就是透过心脏喊话，向对岸当初就是说在这个共产体制统治下的这些同胞，希望他们能够包括说做心理上的劝服，希望他们能够包括投奔自由，包括说群起对抗整个共产体制的政权，会讲述到说，我们生活在这个自由民主的体制下，那经济状况比较良好。
Nowadays, it's China that's turning out the hits. And many Taiwanese artists have moved to China to score gigs in a market 60 times the size of Taiwan's. But playing to Chinese audiences means playing by Beijing's rules. In recent years, Chinese bloggers and internet users have called out Taiwanese celebrities for not expressing their support for the One China principle. And it's not just words that they're picky about, but the artists' food choices too. In August 2022, popular singer Hebe Tian was attacked online for eating spaghetti. It was seen as an endorsement of US Speaker Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan visit. Pelosi, like spaghetti, is of Italian descent.
反对外国势力干涉，反对台独分裂行径，这个是正当的、合理的。现在大陆的年轻人对于国家统一的心情非常迫切，希望尽早的完成这个国家统一。
I think it reflects a few things. First of all, like China is doing a really good job on brainwashing a lot of their people.
Yeah,
right?
and I think we have also seen like a cultural revolution on the internet in China, which is getting crazier and crazier. Because a lot of time, the celebrities from Taiwan that they attack is pretty pro-China.
Such trends provide ammunition for Taiwan's own brand of digital warriors.
Wait. Welcome to Bilingual News, the free international news podcast in the Chinese-speaking world. This is Ken. They're a great source of material, and they actually reaffirm our belief in democracy.
Around 15 years ago, that was a time when everybody pretty much censored ourselves. We don't talk too much about our stories as Taiwanese.
That's true.
So I think it's a big decision, especially for me, because I used to work in China. I took a lot of assignments from China. They paid so well. And so we all decided to shut up a little bit in public for a few years. And then we all reached the point that, okay, like enough is enough.
Mandarin is the largest speaking language in the world, I think. But only Taiwan is the one place that's truly free to speak it. Like, look at China, look at Hong Kong. I think Taiwan is the last place for Mandarin freedom, and we want to preserve it and want to fight for it.
Like Ken and Kylie, many of Taiwan's youth have grown up isolated from China. They forged their own sense of national identity and firmly reject China's current approach to pursuing national reunification.
所以在一国两制的情况下，我觉得这个是最合情合理的、最可行的、最科学的统一方案。我相信这个方案一定会受到广大台湾同胞的支持，最后应该以在和平统一的方式下实现一国两制的模式，最后完成国家统一。
Today, 8 in 10 Taiwanese wish to maintain the status quo, but there are different definitions about what that actually means. For the opposition's Kuomintang or KMT, it means remaining ambiguous about Taiwan's political status through the 1992 consensus. The party is using the midterm elections to drum up support for its vision of resetting cross-strait relations.
好，谢谢大家。维持现状一直都是台湾总理的讲法。那个时候在马政府时代，我们讲，这个9·2共识一中各表的时候，其实就在这个状况下，然后我们维持了两岸一个现状嘛，我们也没有统啊，我们也没有独啊，好，我们还是维持现状。那8年的关系很好。那蔡政府上来以后，他也是讲要维持现状，啊，的确是这样子。可是问题就是，因为他没有9·2共识，他不支持9·2共识，结果大陆就出现已读不回，啊，然后后面你知道这些，加上大陆的反送中啦，这两岸关系不断的恶化下去， 千万不能大意，好不好？好。
我们也希望两岸的分歧，两岸特别是在主权议题上面的这个分歧争议，应该还是要透过对话来解决。啊，至于怎么样才能对话，大家还是要设法去 reach 这个 point 嘛，啊，表达这样子的一个 willingness 啊。那我们常讲说和平啊，和平当然不会是天上自己掉下来的，其实和平也是靠争取来的。
If there's one thing that the DPP and the KMT agree on, it's opposing the one country, two systems model, which China intends to use to reunify with Taiwan. The majority of Taiwanese reject this model, especially after observing the recent political unrest in Hong Kong. Hong Kong currently practices one country, two systems. But China is unlikely to change its direction on Taiwan anytime soon. Chinese President Xi Jinping, who recently secured a third term in office, said, reunification with Taiwan must be realized in this new era.
台湾自古就是中国的领土，中国统一，它有符合国际法，也符合我们的国内法。那么，国家必然统一，也必须统一。我们更有信心，更有条件，更有能力来完成国家的统一。
北京一天到晚一直讲说一国两制，一国两制，甚至讲什么一国两制台湾方案等等的啊。那其实对台湾人民来讲，你一直讲一国两制，可是我一直讲自由民主啊。我们要的就是自由民主嘛。所以我们常讲说中华民国是我们的最大公约数，啊，我们支持我们的国家，支持中华民国。对我来讲，中华民国代表的不只是一个国家，它代表的是一个价值，它代表的是一种生活方式。
Till today, Taiwan's ruling party remains trapped by the cross-strait political deadlock. With China doubling down on its economic and political pressure over the past year, they are pressed to devise a new strategy for cross-strait relations to retain their seats of power in the next election. For now, they are sticking with deterrence.
China has determined to become a maritime power. So Taiwan has become more and more important strategically for China. I think it is very important for Taiwan to continue to develop this kind of robust and credible deterrence and defense. Because without a credible deterrence and defense, I think our bargaining position vis-a-vis China will be very weak. We want to maintain the peace and stability in the region, and we will continue to uphold the so-called status quo policy.
Uncertainty continues to cloud cross-strait relations. But as residents on both sides brace for the storm, they can seek out a silver lining in lessons from the past. 30 years ago, both sides ended decades of closed doors and conflicts. They put aside pride to devise a common framework for peace. Might history repeat itself, and how? These are the questions to which there's currently no consensus.